Put the spoon down, dear. If your hand trembles, they'll know you're lying. Imagine sitting in the most expensive tea room in the city, enjoying the silence, when an elegant older woman slides into the booth opposite you. You've never met her, but the men with guns watching from the bar definitely know who she is. She leans in, smelling of expensive perfume and gunpowder, and whispers 7 words that will end your life as you know it. Pretend you're my son's fiancée. And just like that, Briella Stone didn't just spill her tea. She spilled into a war she wasn't ready for. Welcome to a story of deception, dangerous obsession, and a love that might just kill them both. This is Chapter 1. The clink of silver against bone china was usually a sound that soothed Briella Stone. It was the sound of order, of civilization, of a world where things didn't shatter unexpectedly. She sat in the corner booth of l'Orangerie, a tea room so exclusive that the air inside felt filtered of all impurities. The walls were glass, looking out onto a sun-drenched, manicured garden where the shadows were sharp and decisive. There was no fog today, no gloom, just a piercing, relentless brightness that exposed every flaw in the weave of the table linens. Briella adjusted her sunglasses. Though she was inside, she wasn't famous, but she was infamous in very specific, very expensive circles. After the tribunal regarding the misplaced Vermeer, she had learned that visibility was a liability. She was here for the Earl Grey and the anonymity. She lifted the cup to her lips, closing her eyes. The chair opposite her scraped back. It wasn't a loud noise, but in the hush of the room, it sounded like a slide racking on a pistol. Briella opened her eyes. A woman had seated herself across the small marble-top table. She was striking, silver hair coiffed into a razor-sharp bob, wearing a cream suit that likely cost more than Briella's entire stolen education. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and currently scanning the room with the intensity of a radar dish. "I didn't order company," Briella said, her voice low. She didn't put down her cup. The woman didn't look at her. She was looking past Briella's shoulder, toward the mahogany doors of the entrance. She picked up a teaspoon, inspecting her reflection in the convex silver. "Don't look left," the woman said. Her voice was a localized vibration, barely audible over the ambient jazz. "There is a man in a navy trench coat standing by the host stand. He has his hand in his pocket. He isn't reaching for a wallet." Briella felt a cold prickle run down her spine, the kind of biological alarm system she hadn't felt since the gallery raid in Zurich. "Who are you?" "My name is Elena Kingsley," the woman said, finally locking eyes with Briella. The weight of the name dropped between them like a lead bar. Briella froze. Everyone knew the name. The Kingsleys weren't just organized crime, they were an institution. They were the reason construction projects finished early, and why certain politicians retired young. And Elena Kingsley was the matriarch. "Mrs. Kingsley," Briella said, carefully setting her cup down. "I think there has been a mistake. I'm just leaving." "You can't," Elena said, her voice tightening. She reached across the table, her manicured hand gripping Briella's wrist. Her grip was iron, betraying the elegance of her suit. "If you stand up alone, he shoots us both. He's waiting for a signal. He needs to think I'm meeting family. He needs to hesitate." "Why me?" Briella hissed, trying to pull her hand back, but Elena held fast. "Because you have the look," Elena said rapidly. "Intelligent, damaged, expensive but not flashy. My son likes that type." "Your son? Elias is walking through those doors in 30 seconds, Elena whispered, her eyes darting back to the man in the navy coat. "If he sees me alone, he'll draw his weapon. If he draws, the man in navy shoots. If the man in navy shoots, Elias dies. I will not bury my son today, Miss Stone, Briella Stone." "Briella," Elena tasted the name. "Listen to me very carefully. When Elias walks in, you are not a stranger. You are the woman he has been hiding from the family. You are the reason he's late. You are his fiancée." "This is insane," Briella breathed, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "He won't play along. He doesn't know me." "Elias is quick," Elena said, a ghost of a smile touching her red lips. "He is my son. He will understand the board before he moves a piece. But you must sell it. If that assassin sees a flicker of confusion in your eyes, we are all dead." The air in the tea room seemed to vanish. The door chimed. The atmosphere shifted instantly. It wasn't a sound, but a pressure change. Heads turned. Elias Kingsley walked in. He was taller than the photos in the paper suggested. He wore a charcoal suit cut so sharply it looked like it could draw blood. His hair was dark, swept back, and his face was a map of hard lines and cold intent. He didn't walk. He stalked. His eyes swept the room, assessing threats, exits, and liabilities in a single pass. He saw the man in the navy coat. His hand twitched toward the inside of his jacket. "Now," Elena hissed. "Smile at him. Wave." Briella's survival instinct, honed by years of navigating high-stakes art fraud, kicked in. She didn't just wave, she transformed. She dropped her sunglasses to the bridge of her nose, her face lighting up with a radiant, intimate warmth that she usually reserved for examining a genuine Da Vinci. She raised her hand, wiggling her fingers playfully. "Darling!" she called out, her voice carrying clear and bright across the silent room. "Over here! Mother and I have ordered the scones." The effect was instantaneous. The man in the navy coat flinched, his hand pausing in his pocket. Confusion rippled across his face. This wasn't a hit. It was a family brunch. The hesitation was palpable. Elias stopped dead. His gaze snapped to the booth. For a microsecond, Briella saw pure, unadulterated violence in his eyes. He looked at his mother, then at the strange woman calling him darling. He processed the scene. The man by the door. The lack of cover. His mother's rigid posture. The stranger's desperate, perfectly acted joy. Elias Kingsley didn't blink. The violence in his eyes receded, replaced by a smooth, terrifying charm, a shark learning to smile. "Sorry I'm late, love," Elias said, his voice a deep baritone that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, ignoring the assassin entirely. He reached the table. Briella stood up, her legs shaking, but she forced herself to lean into him. Elias didn't hesitate. He wrapped a heavy arm around her waist, pulling her flush against his hard chest. He smelled of cedarwood, expensive starch, and something metallic. He looked down at her, and up close his eyes were a startling, icy blue. "You started without me," he murmured, loud enough for the room to hear. Then he did the unthinkable. He cupped her jaw with a large, warm hand and kissed her. It wasn't a peck. It was possessive, demanding, and thorough. It was a kiss designed to mark territory. Briella gasped against his mouth, and he used that sound to deepen the kiss, angling his head to block the assassin's line of sight to his mother. "Play along," he whispered against her lips, the words imperceptible to anyone else. "Or we don't leave this room." The kiss broke, but the proximity didn't. Elias kept his arm wound tightly around Briella's waist, turning her body so she was partially shielding his mother. It was a human shield tactic masquerading as romance. "Mother," Elias nodded to Elena, his voice tight. "You look well, despite the company you keep." "She's charming, Elias," Elena said, picking up her tea with a hand that was now perfectly steady. "She was just telling me about the wedding date." The assassin by the door was backing down. The domesticity of the scene had disrupted his parameters. He pulled a phone from his pocket, likely texting a abort code or asking for new orders. He turned and exited the tea room, the bell chiming cheerfully. Elias didn't relax. If anything, his muscles grew harder against Briella. "Check, please." Elias signaled a waiter, throwing a black credit card onto the table. "We're leaving. Now." "But the scones," Elena protested mildly. "Now, mother," Elias growled. The next 5 minutes were a blur of movement. Elias ushered them out the back exit, through a kitchen that smelled of yeast and panic, and into a narrow alleyway where a sleek black SUV was idling. The moment the door slammed shut, Elena in the back, Elias and Briella in the middle row, the atmosphere shattered. Elias released Briella as if she burned him. He turned on the leather seat, pinning her with a look of lethal curiosity. "Drive!" he commanded the partition. The car surged forward. "Who are you?" Elias demanded. The charm was gone. This was the boss. "And why was a hitman from the Vane Syndicate hesitating because of you?" "He wasn't hesitating because of me," Briella snapped back, her own temper flaring now that the adrenaline was fading. She smoothed her skirt, trying to regain her dignity. "He hesitated because your mother is a genius at improvisation. And I'm Briella Stone. You're welcome, by the way." "Stone?" Elias narrowed his eyes. He pulled a tablet from the seat pocket and tapped the screen rapidly. "Briella Stone, disgraced art authenticator, fired from the Metropolitan for certifying a fake Pollock, blacklisted in London, currently working. Nowhere." Briella felt the heat rise in her cheeks. "It wasn't a fake. The pigment analysis was flawed." "I don't care about the paint," Elias said coldly. I care that a civilian is sitting in my car after interfering with a syndicate hit. Civilian? Briella laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. I just saved your mother's life. That man in the navy coat, he had a ceramic pistol. Glock 17, likely 3D printed components to get through the metal detectors. I saw the bulge in the coat pocket. It didn't hang right for a wallet or a phone. The weight distribution was off. Silence filled the car. Even Elena, who was checking her makeup in a compact mirror, paused. Elias stared at her. The contempt in his eyes shifted, replaced by a calculating assessment. He looked at her not as a woman, but as an asset. You notice the weight distribution? Elias asked slowly. I noticed details, Briella said, lifting her chin. It's what I do, or what I used to do before people like you ruined the art world with money laundering. Elias leaned in close again. The space between them crackled with static. People like me are the only reason people like you have jobs, Miss Stone. And right now, people like me are the only reason you're going to stay alive. Excuse me. Julian Vane, the man who sent that hitman, doesn't leave loose ends, Elias explained, his voice devoid of emotion. He saw your face. He saw me kiss you. He thinks you matter to me, which means you are now a target. So drop me off at the police station, Briella said, though her stomach churned. The police are on Vane's payroll. Elena chimed in from the back seat, snapping her compact shut. Darling, you really were wonderful back there. That mother line? Inspired. This isn't a game, mother, Elias snapped, not looking away from Briella. She's a liability. She's an opportunity, Elena corrected. The gala is in 3 days, Elias. You need a partner, someone who knows art, someone who can lie to a room full of thieves without blinking, someone the Vane family won't suspect because they think she's just your paramour. Elias paused. He looked at Briella's hands, long fingers, steady now. He looked at her eyes, defiant, intelligent, terrified, but hiding it. The Obsidian Gala, Elias muttered. What is that? Briella asked. An auction, Elias said. Black market antiquities. The Vane syndicate is moving a piece through it. A ledger disguised as a Renaissance painting. I need to get my hands on it before they sell it. And you want me to… What? Steal it? Authenticate it, Elias said, and then help me steal it. I'm not a thief, Briella stated firmly. You certified a fake Pollock for $2 million, Elias countered smoothly. You're already a thief, Briella. You just haven't admitted it to yourself yet. The car swerved smoothly off the highway, approaching a massive iron gate. Where are we going? Briella asked, watching the imposing stone walls of an estate rise up. Home, Elias said. If Vane thinks you're my fiancée, then you need to live like it. Welcome to the family, Miss Stone. Try not to get blood on the carpets. The Kingsley estate was not a home. It was a fortress disguised as a palace. The architecture was brutalist meets Baroque. Concrete angles softened by ivy and marble. As the car crunched over the gravel driveway, Briella saw armed guards patrolling the perimeter with dogs. They weren't hiding the guns here. Elias ushered her out of the car. His grip on her elbow was firm, guiding her up the massive stone steps. My staff are loyal, Elias said as the double doors swung open. But loyalty has a price. Assume everyone is listening. Assume the house is bugged by my enemies, or my mother, or both. You live in a paranoid nightmare, Briella whispered, stepping into a foyer that was larger than her entire apartment building. A chandelier the size of a compact car hung overhead. I live in reality, Elias corrected. He stripped off his jacket, handing it to a waiting butler without a glance. Make her comfortable. Put her in the blue suite. It connects to mine. Connects? Briella balked. Absolutely not. Elias turned to her. The staff evaporated, leaving them alone in the cavernous hall. If Vane sends a team tonight, they will come for you first to get to me. If you are in the East Wing, you will be dead before I can reload. If you are next to me, you might survive. It's not a seduction, Miss Stone. It's logistics. Briella stared at him. He was infuriatingly pragmatic. I didn't agree to this. I didn't agree to the gala, or the heist, or playing house. You have a debt, Elias said, walking closer. He towered over her. My mother dragged you into this, yes, but you played the part. You stepped into the arena. You can't just walk out of the Coliseum while the lions are hungry. I want a contract, Briella said suddenly. Elias blinked, surprised. Excuse me? If I do this, Briella said, her voice gaining strength. If I play the doting fiancé, if I help you identify this ledger painting at the gala, I want something in return. Money? Elias sneered slightly. Everyone wants money. No, reputation, Briella said. The Vermeer, the one that ruined me. I know your family handles acquisitions. I want the proof that I was right. I want my name cleared. Elias studied her. For the first time, there was a flicker of genuine respect in his cold gaze. She wasn't begging for safety. She was negotiating for her life's work. The Vermeer dossier is in the Vatican archives, Elias said softly. But I have contacts. Do we have a deal? Briella extended her hand. Elias looked at her hand, then up at her face. He took her hand, his skin rough against hers. Deal, but you wear the ring. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. It wasn't a velvet box. He just had it loose in his pocket. It was a vintage diamond, massive, set in black and platinum. It looked like a piece of frozen smoke. This was my grandmother's, he said, sliding it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. She poisoned 3 of her husbands. Try not to take inspiration from her. Briella looked down at the heavy stone. It felt like a shackle. I make no promises. Sir! The shout came from the top of the stairs. The head of security, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow, was looking down, his face pale. What is it, Marcus? Elias barked, his demeanor shifting instantly from negotiator to commander. The blue suite, Marcus said. We did the sweep. Elias didn't ask what they found. He grabbed Briella's hand and sprinted up the stairs, dragging her with him. They burst into the room that was supposed to be hers. It was beautiful. Silks, velvets, a view of the gardens. But on the pillow of the pristine bed sat a single object, a dead canary, and pinned to its chest with a hat pin was a note written on cream cardstock. Elias walked over, pushing Briella behind him. He didn't touch the note. He leaned in to read it. Briella peered around his arm. The handwriting was elegant, jagged script. She looks lovely, Elias. Can't wait to meet her properly. JV. He was here, Briella whispered, the blood draining from her face. How was he here? We just left the tea shop. Elias turned around. His face was a mask of fury. But underneath it, Briella saw the realization dawning. He wasn't here, Elias said grimly. Someone on the inside placed this. He looked at Briella. The engagement just became real, Briella, because the only way you survive is if you stay within arm's reach of me. 24 hours a day. Briella looked at the dead bird, then at the man who was now her jailer and protector. Does that include the bathroom? She asked, a hysterical edge to her voice. Elias didn't smile, if necessary. He walked to the door and slammed it shut, locking it. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Welcome to the Kingsley family, he said. Now tell me everything you know about Renaissance canvas weaving. We have work to do. The blue suite did not feel like a sanctuary. It felt like a cage wrapped in silk. For the next 48 hours, the Kingsley estate became a pressure cooker. The outside world was locked away behind iron gates and armed patrols, while inside, Briella Stone and Elias Kingsley were engaged in a different kind of war, the war of information. Wrong, Elias said, his voice cutting through the quiet of the library. He was pacing by the fireplace, the flames casting long, dancing shadows against the rows of leather-bound books. My first dog was a Doberman named Brutus, not a retriever. If Vane asks and you say golden retriever, he'll know you're a construct. He knows I hate shedding. Briella sat on the velvet sofa, surrounded by dossiers. Her head throbbed. Who asks about childhood pets during a black market auction? People looking for cracks in the armor. Elias stopped pacing and looked at her. He had shed the suit jacket, his white shirt rolled up to the elbows, revealing forearms that were scarred and corded with muscle. Vane is a predator. He doesn't attack the throat first. He nips at the heels. He'll ask you about our first date. He'll ask about the ring. He'll ask about how I take my coffee. Black, like your soul, Briella muttered, turning a page in the file labeled Julian Vane. Known associates. Elias actually smirked. It was a terrifying expression, sharp and fleeting. Precisely. Now quiz me. The Vermeer. Briella straightened, shifting into her element. The misplaced Vermeer was titled The Girl in the Blue Twilight. Why did the tribunal claim it was a fake? Because the lead white pigment contained traces of titanium. Elias recited perfectly, his eyes never leaving hers. Titanium wasn't used in pigments until the 1920s. Therefore, it couldn't be 17th century. And why were they wrong? Because the painting had been restored in 1928 by a clumsy amateur who used modern white to patch a crack in the sky, Elias said, stepping closer. You found the original lead layer underneath the patch. The board ignored your findings because the buyer was a rival of the museum director. Briella felt a lump form in her throat. Hearing him say it, stating the facts that had destroyed her career with such clinical precision, was strangely validating. You memorized the file, she said softly. I memorize everything that belongs to me, Elias said. The air in the room grew heavy. And right now, your reputation belongs to me. If we pull this off, I buy the museum board. I force a public apology. I give you back your life. And if we fail? Elias walked over to the sofa. He placed a hand on the backrest, leaning down until his face was inches from hers. She could smell the expensive scotch on his breath and the gun oil on his hands. If we fail, Vane kills me, Elias said simply. And then he keeps you. He collects beautiful things, Briella. And he breaks them to see how they work. Briella shivered, not from cold, but from the raw intensity of his gaze. So we don't fail. No, Elias murmured. We don't. He reached out, his fingers brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. It was a calculated move, practice for the public display of affection they would need to perform. But his hand lingered a second too long. His thumb grazed her temple, a touch that was shockingly gentle for a man who ordered executions before breakfast. Your dress arrived, he said, pulling back abruptly. It's in your room. Put it on. We leave in an hour. An hour? The gala isn't until 8. We aren't going straight to the gala, Elias said, walking toward the door. We have to stop at the safe house first. There's something you need to carry. Carry? Like a weapon? Elias paused at the door. Better. Leverage. The Obsidian Gala was held in an abandoned cathedral that had been repurposed as a private event space. The Gothic arches soared into darkness, illuminated only by floating LED candles that drifted like ghosts above the heads of the crowd. The attendees were a mix of international royalty, tech billionaires, and warlords in tuxedos. It was a gathering of wolves in sheep's clothing, and the scent of money was overpowering. Briella stepped out of the limousine, her hand gripping Elias's arm so tight her knuckles were white. She was wearing armor. It just happened to look like a dress. It was a floor-length gown of midnight blue silk, backless and severe, with a slit that ran up to her thigh. Around her neck sat a diamond choker that Elias had fastened himself, cold, heavy, and worth more than the building they were entering. Breathe, Elias whispered against her ear as the paparazzi bulbs flashed, blinding them. You own this room. They are just tourists. They moved through the crowd like a shark moving through a school of fish. People parted. Eyes followed them. Whispers trailed in their wake like perfume. Is that her? Who is she? Look at the way he holds her. Elias played the part of the obsessed lover perfectly. His hand never left the small of her back. He leaned in constantly to whisper observations, his lips brushing her ear, making it look like intimacy, when it was actually tactical reconnaissance. 3 o'clock, Elias murmured. The man with the eye patch, Russian arms dealer. Ignore him. 9 o'clock, woman in red, Interpol informant. Smile at her. It makes her nervous. Briella smiled dazzlingly at the woman in red, who promptly spilled her champagne. You're enjoying this, Briella whispered back, keeping her smile fixed. I enjoy winning, Elias corrected. They reached the center of the nave, where the auction items were displayed in glass cases. And there it was, Lot 45, the Penitent Saint. It was a small, dark oil painting depicting a monk praying in a cave. To the untrained eye, it was a gloomy, unremarkable piece of 16th century religious art. To Briella, it was a map. Tell me what you see, Elias said, his voice low. Briella leaned in, her eyes scanning the brushwork. The craquelure is consistent with the period. The varnish is yellowed, but the composition, the shadows in the monk's robe are too heavy, too geometric. That's the ledger, Elias said. Vane encoded his entire laundering operation into the shading of the robe using a binary pattern of brushstrokes. I need that painting, Briella. Well, if it isn't the happy couple. The voice was like warm honey poured over broken glass. Briella froze. She straightened slowly as Elias turned, his body tensing against hers. Julian Vane stood before them. He was beautiful in the way a poisonous flower is beautiful. Blonde hair, pale eyes, and a smile that didn't reach his soul. He wore a white tuxedo jacket that made him stand out in the sea of black. Julian, Elias nodded, his tone bored. I see you're still wearing white after Labor Day. Brave. And I see you finally brought your mystery woman out of the shadows." Julian's eyes slid to Briella. He looked her up and down, lingering on the diamond choker. "And she is exquisite. Elias, you've been holding out on us." "Briella, this is Julian Vane," Elias said, his arm tightening around her waist. "He runs the catering." Julian laughed, a soft, dry sound. He took Briella's hand and kissed the air above her knuckles. "Charmed, Miss Stone. I heard about the incident at the tea room. My apologies. My staff can be so overzealous." "It was memorable," Briella said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. She pulled her hand back. "Though I prefer my tea without gunfire." Julian's eyes narrowed slightly. He liked that she bit back. "Indeed. Tell me, what brings a woman of your talents to a man like Elias? Surely not his conversation." "His art collection," Briella lied smoothly, remembering the script. "He has a jagged intensity that matches the chaotic era of the pieces he collects. I find order boring, Mr. Vane. Elias is beautifully disordered." Elias looked down at her, and for a split second, Briella wondered if he was acting, because the heat in his eyes looked dangerously real. "She has a poet's soul," Elias said, "and an appraiser's eye. We're here for lot 45. The smile vanished from Julian's face. "The Saint? A dreary little piece? Surely you'd prefer the diamonds." "I like the shadows," Elias said. "I'm afraid," Julian said, his voice dropping an octave, "that painting is not going to the highest bidder tonight. It's already been promised to a buyer in Macau." "Everything has a price," Elias challenged. "Not this!" Julian stepped closer, invading their personal space. "Some things are too dangerous to sell, Elias. Even for you. Take your lovely fiancée and go home, before the tea gets spilled again." Julian turned and vanished into the crowd. Elias gripped Briella's arm. "Plan B!" "What's Plan B?" Briella asked, heart racing. "We don't buy it," Elias said, checking his watch. "We steal it. Right now." The lights in the cathedral flickered. "That's the signal," Elias said. "My team just cut the main grid. We have 60 seconds before the backup generators kick in fully. In the confusion, the security locks on the cases will reset. It's a glitch in their system we found." "You want me to open the case?" "I want you to swap it." Elias reached into his jacket and pulled out a rolled-up canvas. It was a high-quality print of the saint, aged and textured. "I'll create a distraction. You have 10 seconds to cut the canvas out of the frame and replace it with this." "Cut it! Elias, that destroys the value." "I don't care about the art. I need the code and the paint." Suddenly, the cathedral plunged into darkness. Screams erupted. The LED candles provided the only light, casting eerie, swinging shadows. "Go!" Elias pushed her. Briella moved. She didn't run. Running drew attention. She glided through the panic, moving toward lot 45. She reached the glass case. The magnetic lock clicked and released, just as Elias had predicted. She lifted the heavy glass lid. The smell of old varnish hit her. She pulled a scalpel from her clutch. The leverage Elias had given her at the safe house. Her hands, usually so gentle with art, became surgical instruments. She sliced the canvas along the inner edge of the frame. Zip, 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 zip. The painting came free. She rolled it tight and shoved it into the hidden lining of her clutch. She unrolled the fake, pressing the adhesive edges against the frame. It wasn't perfect, but in the dark, it would pass. She lowered the glass case. Click. The light slammed back on. Briella blinked, blinded. She stood by the case, her chest heaving, trying to look casual. "Ladies and gentlemen, apologies," a voice boomed over the speakers. "Just a minor technical hiccup." Briella turned to find Elias. He was 10 feet away, holding a waiter by the lapels, pretending to help him up from a fall. He looked at her. She tapped her clutch once. "Got it." He nodded, a microscopic movement. He started to move toward her. Then, the heavy oak doors of the cathedral slammed shut. The music stopped. Julian Vane walked onto the auctioneer's podium, a microphone in his hand. He wasn't smiling anymore. "I'm afraid no one is leaving just yet." Julian's voice echoed through the vast space. "It seems we have a thief in our midst." The crowd murmured. Security guards with assault rifles stepped out from the shadows of the arches, blocking every exit. "Someone," Julian continued, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed directly on Briella, "has tampered with lot 45. Briella's blood turned to ice. He knew. How did he know? "Miss Stone," Julian purred. "Would you be so kind as to join me on stage and bring your clutch." Elias moved instantly, stepping between Briella and the stage. "She goes nowhere." Elias, Julian tutted. "Look at the painting." Elias looked at the case. The fake was there. It looked fine. "It's not the painting that gave you away," Julian said, holding up a small remote. "It's the weight sensors. The fake you brought, it's 30 grams lighter than the original. Lid paint is heavy, Elias. You should know that." Julian signaled the guards. 12 rifles pointed at Elias and Briella. "Bring them both," Julian commanded, "and kill anyone else who moves." Elias looked at Briella. He didn't look afraid. He looked furious. "Trust me," he whispered. "Trust you," Briella hissed, clutching the stolen painting against her ribs. "We're trapped in a church with a psychopath and a firing squad." "I have one more card," Elias said, his hand moving to his cufflink. "What card?" "Explosives," Elias said calmly. "I rigged the exits." "You rigged the exits we are currently locked inside of?" Briella stared at him in horror. "It's a motivation tactic." Elias grabbed her hand. "When I blow the doors, we run. Do not stop. Do not look back. Do not trip." "And if we don't make it?" Elias looked at her, and the mask slipped completely. For the first time, she saw the man beneath the monster. "Then at least we die with the Vermeer cleared," he said. "I sent the dossier to the press an hour ago. You're already famous again, Briella." He twisted the cufflink. Boom! The main doors of the cathedral disintegrated in a ball of fire and splintered wood. The shockwave knocked the guards flat. Chaos erupted. Real chaos this time. "Run!" Elias roared. He pulled her into the smoke, into the debris, and into the night, with the entire underworld screaming at their heels. The night air tasted of sulfur and burning pine. Elias drove the getaway car, a nondescript gray sedan stashed 3 blocks from the cathedral, with a terrifying, surgical precision. He didn't speed. He wove. He took corners that shouldn't exist, and alleyways that barely cleared the side mirrors. Beside him, Briella clutched the rolled-up canvas to her chest, as if it were a newborn. Her ears were still ringing from the explosion, and her midnight blue gown was ruined, the hem torn and stained with soot. "Are we clear?" she asked, her voice trembling. Elias checked the rearview mirror for the 100th time. His face was streaked with ash, and there was a dark, wet patch spreading on the shoulder of his white shirt. "For now, Vane will lock down the city, airports, train stations, bridges. He has the police commissioner in his pocket." "You're bleeding," Briella noted, staring at his shoulder. "Shrapnel from the door," Elias said dismissively. "It missed the artery. Keep your eyes on the GPS. We're heading for the coast." They drove in silence for an hour, the city lights fading into the rear view, replaced by the encroaching dark of the desolate coastline. The destination was an old, weather-beaten lighthouse standing on a jagged promontory. It looked abandoned, the kind of place ghosts went to die. Elias pulled the car into a hidden garage beneath the structure. The moment the engine died, the adrenaline crash hit Briella like a physical blow. She slumped back against the seat, the weight of the night crushing her. "We stole from Julian Vane," she whispered. "We blew up a church. Technically, we remodeled it," Elias said, opening his door. He stumbled slightly as he got out, his invincible facade cracking. Briella was out of the car in a second. She rushed to his side, slipping her arm under his uninjured shoulder to support him. "You're losing too much blood. We need a hospital." "No hospitals," Elias gritted out. "There's a med kit upstairs. You'll have to do it." The lighthouse interior was surprisingly modern, a stark contrast to the exterior. Briella helped Elias to a leather armchair in the center of the room. She found the kit, more of a field trauma unit, and set to work. She had restored 17th century frescoes with hands steady enough to paint eyelashes on a cherub. Now she used those same hands to clean a jagged wound in the shoulder of a mafia boss. Elias watched her, his face pale but his eyes burning with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He didn't flinch as she poured the antiseptic. "You didn't run," he said softly. "You told me to run," Briella corrected, wrapping the gauze. "I told you to run away," Elias said. "You ran with me. There is a difference." Briella paused, her hand resting on his chest. She could feel his heart beating, slow and heavy. "You cleared my name, Elias. I saw the alert on my phone before the signal jammed. The museum board. They're begging for a meeting. You gave me my life back." "I keep my deals," Elias murmured. He reached up, his hand covering hers. His skin was hot. "But the deal is done, Briella. You have the painting. You have your reputation. There's a boat in the cove below. You can take it. Be in Canada by morning. And leave you here, bleeding and hunted? I am a weapon, Briella. I was built for this, Elias said, his thumb stroking her knuckles. You are an artist. You create things. I only destroy them. You should go before I destroy you too. Briella looked at the man who had kidnapped her, protected her, and blown up a building for her. She thought about the safe, sterile life of the museum archives. Then she thought about the way he had looked at her in the tea room, like she was the only real thing in a world of fakes. The composition is off, she said quietly. Elias frowned. What? The painting. Briella nodded toward the canvas on the table. You said Vane hid a ledger in the shadows, but I looked at it in the car. The shadows aren't binary code, Elias. They're a map. Elias sat up straighter, wincing. A map to what? That's why I'm staying, Briella said, tightening the bandage with a final, decisive tug. Because you look at the paint and see money. I look at it and see the truth. And I think Julian Vane isn't just a money launderer. I think he's something much worse. The lighthouse became a war room. For 3 hours, Briella worked under the harsh light of a magnifying lamp. The penitent saint was pinned to the drafting table. Elias stood behind her, shirtless and bandaged, a gun resting on the table next to the coffee mug. Here, Briella pointed with her scalpel. Look at the monk's rosary beads. They aren't random. The light hits them at specific angles. It corresponds to a geographical coordinate system used in maritime navigation during the 1600s. Vane doesn't care about history, Elias said. He cares about leverage. Exactly. Briella traced the line of the beads. The coordinates point to a location in the Swiss Alps, but it's the secondary layer. The glaze on the cave wall, that's the real secret. It's written in invisible fluoroscopic varnish. I need a UV light. Elias produced a UV tactical flashlight from his gear bag. He clicked it on, sweeping the purple beam over the canvas. The dark cave in the painting lit up with glowing, ghostly text. It wasn't a list of illegal transactions. It was a list of names. Senator H., Judge M., Director of Interpol. And at the very bottom, a date and a shipment number. Elias swore softly. It's not a ledger of his crimes. It's his insurance policy. Vane isn't just moving money for the families. He's gathering blackmail material on every major government official in Europe. He owns them. Wait. Briella squinted at the glowing text. Look at the shipment. Project Chimera. Destination. Port of Hamburg. Contents. Weapons-grade plutonium. The silence in the room was deafening. He's not selling antiques, Elias said, his voice cold as the ocean outside. He's selling nuclear triggers. That's why he couldn't let us buy the painting. This isn't organized crime, Briella. This is terrorism. If this gets out, every government agency in the world will hunt him down, Elias finished. He doesn't need to kill us to hide a theft. He needs to kill us to prevent World War III. A low hum vibrated through the floorboards. Elias froze. He killed the light. Get down, he whispered. What is it? Helicopter. Elias moved to the window, peering through the slats of the shutters. Running low, no lights. They found us. How? Briella asked, panic rising in her chest. We ditched the car. The phones are off. The canvas, Elias realized, turning to look at the masterpiece. The frame had a tracker, but Vane isn't stupid. He used a radioactive isotope in the paint itself. Faint, but trackable, if you have a Geiger counter and a satellite. We brought the beacon right to our doorstep. The hum grew into a roar. A spotlight blasted through the window, blinding them. This is Julian Vane! A voice amplified by a loudspeaker boomed over the crashing waves. Surrender the painting and I will make it quick. Resist and I burn the lighthouse to the ground. Elias grabbed the gun. He grabbed a flare gun from the emergency wall mount. There is no boat, is there? Briella asked, realizing the truth. There was, Elias said, checking the chamber of his pistol. But we don't have time to get to the cove. They have snipers on the ridge. He looked at her. Do you trust me? You keep asking me that, Briella said, her voice shaking but her hand steady as she rolled up the painting. And I keep staying. Good. Elias handed her the flare gun. Because we're going to bluff the devil. The front door of the lighthouse swung open. Briella Stone walked out onto the wind-swept gravel. The spotlight hit her instantly, turning her blue dress into a shimmering beacon. She held the rolled canvas in one hand and the flare gun in the other. Stop! She screamed over the roar of the rotor blades. 50 yards away, a perimeter of black-clad mercenaries stood with rifles raised. In the center, stepping out of a sleek black helicopter that had landed on the flat rock, was Julian Vane. He looked impeccable, wind whipping his white jacket. He smiled, but his eyes were dead. "Brave girl!" Vane shouted. "Where is my friend Elias?" "Inside," Briella yelled back, rigging the gas main to blow. "If you shoot me, he lights a match. The painting burns. The evidence burns. And you lose your leverage over half of Europe." Vane paused. He raised a hand, signaling his men to hold fire. "You know what's on it, then." "I know about Project Chimera," Briella bluffed, her voice carrying on the wind. "I know about the plutonium, and I know that if I upload the photos I just took to the cloud, you're a dead man walking." "You don't have internet out here," Vane sneered, taking a step forward. "Nice try, darling. Now give me the canvas." "I don't need internet to destroy it." Briella raised the flare gun, pointing it not at Vane, but straight down at the canvas in her hand. "One pull, and phosphorus burns through oil paint in seconds." Vane stopped. The greed in his eyes wrestled with the caution. He needed that list. It was his crown. "Let's make a deal," Vane said, his voice silky. "The painting for your lives. I let you walk away. You and Elias. You can go to Paris, Rome. I'll even fund the honeymoon." "We want a helicopter," Briella demanded. "Yours." Vane laughed. "Ambitious. I like that." He gestured to the pilot to step out. "Fine. The chopper is yours. Hand over the art." Briella took a step forward. Vane took a step forward. Behind Vane, in the shadow of the rocks, a shadow moved. Vane reached for the canvas. Briella extended her arm. "Now!" she screamed, dropping to the ground. Elias didn't emerge from the lighthouse. He emerged from the dark, cold ocean water behind Vane. He had climbed down the chute and swam around the point. 2 shots rang out. Vane's mercenaries turned, but they were too late. The first bullet took the pilot out of the equation. The second bullet hit the fuel tank of the helicopter. "Get down!" Elias roared, sprinting toward Briella. Briella curled into a ball, shielding her head. The helicopter exploded. The shockwave knocked Vane off his feet, sending him sprawling into the gravel. The mercenaries were scattered by the blast, blinded by the fireball. Elias was there in a second. He stood over Vane, his gun pointed directly at the man's forehead. Vane looked up, his face singed, his white suit ruined. "It's over, Julian," Elias said. "You can't kill me." Vane coughed, blood on his teeth. "The families, they'll hunt you." "The families are already here." A new voice cut through the chaos. From the road leading to the lighthouse, a convoy of SUVs appeared, headlights cutting through the smoke. They screeched to a halt. Elena Kingsley stepped out of the lead car. She wasn't alone. She was flanked by the heads of the 5 other syndicates. "You were sloppy, Julian," Elena said, walking past the burning wreckage, her heels clicking on the stone. "You tried to sell us out to the feds. Elias sent us the decrypted files 10 minutes ago." Elias looked at Briella. "The internet works fine in the lighthouse. I just wanted him distracted." Vane looked at the circle of crime bosses surrounding him. He realized with dawning horror that prison was no longer an option. "Mother," Elias said, lowering his gun, "he's yours." Elena Kingsley smiled, a cold, terrifying expression. "Thank you, darling. Briella, you look dreadful. We really must get you a new stylist." Elias pulled Briella to her feet. He didn't look at his mother, or the burning helicopter, or the millions of dollars in blackmail material. He looked at her. "Are you okay?" he asked. Briella looked at the chaos, then at the man holding her. She felt the heavy diamond ring on her finger. It didn't feel like a shackle anymore. "I think," she said, leaning her head against his chest, "that I'm going to need a lot more tea." 3 months later, the Stone and Kingsley Gallery opening was the event of the season. The press was there, not for a scandal, but for the revelation of the newly authenticated Vermeer. Briella stood by the painting, holding a glass of champagne. She wore white this time. "It looks good," Elias said, appearing beside her. He wasn't wearing a tux. He was wearing a suit that fit him like a second skin, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. "It looks real," Briella corrected. "Because it is." "Mother is asking when we're setting the date," Elias murmured in her ear. "Tell her it's a fake engagement," Briella teased, looking up at him. Elias smirked, leaning down to kiss her, right there in front of the cameras, in front of the world. "I think we both know, Miss Stone, that I don't deal in fakes anymore." The flashbulbs erupted, capturing the moment, the thief and the authenticator, the dangerous lie that became the only truth that mattered. And that is the story of how a cup of tea turned into an international heist. I hope you enjoyed the twists, the betrayals, and the romance. Did you suspect the mother had the backup plan all along? If you want more stories like this, where romance meets high-stakes danger, hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a chapter. Let me know in the comments. Would you have gotten in the car with Elias, or would you have run? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.